You're welcome to my channel once again. If this is what interests you, kindly stay to the end. We'll start by drafting the short first, then before we draft the upper borders. Now I have this fabric, it is folded into two, so I'm going to mark 1 inch all the way down, because when you're cutting your trouser or your short, you have to fold your fabric into two. Now I went ahead to roll the 1 inch down, then I'm also marking 1 inch at the starting line. I like when I have my lines, so I'll know where I'm starting from. Yes, so we can now start with the measurement. Now our hip is 44 inches, divided by 4 is 11, so I'm going to mark 11. That's 11 inches, serves as the crotch depth. Yeah, so I'll square up the line. After squaring up the line, then on the crotch line, I'm going to put the hip measurement as well, that is 11 inches. I'll indicate the 11 inches that way. Then I'm going to now mark the lap measurement on that line. The lap is 27, divided by 2 is 13.5. Now on the waist measurement, I'm going to repeat the hip measurement of 11 inches. Then I'll connect the line. That's the 2 hip measurements. After that, I'm going to be dividing that 13.5 inches, that is the lap measurement, into 2. That becomes my center line. That is where you share all your measurements. So when you get that way, then the length for this tutorial is 16.5. You have to measure your clients though. You ask them where they want their short to get to, or you can just go down from your crotch depth by 5 inches or 4.5. I did 5 inches. Then I'm also going to square the line up. Then the next thing is to put my hemming allowance. I normally use 2 inches for hemming allowance, so that is me indicating the 2 inches. Now what I have after dividing my lap into 2, I'm going to repeat it at the full length of the short. Then I'll roll the line. Now the next thing I'll do is on the waist measurement, I'm going to be putting the waist. Now your waist measurement will start from this side. You mark it. So for this client, our waist is 36, divided by 4 is 9 inches. Now on the crotch depth, I'm going up by 2.5 inches. That serves as my hip line. You can do 2 inches or 2.5, then you connect it just the way you see me doing, like that, to the crotch depth. Now what I have there is 1 inch. It shouldn't be more than that. When it's more than that, that's when you start having those bulge at the front of your crotch. So you connect your waist measurement to that hip. The reason why I normally do that is just to avoid any sharp curve along my hip area. Then guys, to get the round nail, since the short did not get to the nail, I'm just going to be minusing 0.25 from what I have on my lap. You know, it's 6.75 on both sides, so I mark 6.5 inches on both sides that way. And if you check the picture on the thumbnail, the short does not have, it's just a straight short, not like it's tiny. So that is why I just minus 0.25 on both sides, then I connected it. I hope you understand. Now I'm going to be adding 1/2 inch to that waist area. That is for those that will always ask me, you did not add any allowance for zip or whatever. So that is why I'm adding this 1/2 inch. Sometimes I don't do that. Now on this other waistline here, you're going to come down by 1.5 inch. That is just to avoid any bulge on your waist side, and it's also help your short or your trouser fit better. So I'm cutting it out now. Then I'm going to cut the crotch side. Now I'm cutting off that 1 inch, the starting line. We don't need that. So guys, we're done drafting the front. We are going to place it and draft the back. Now you fold your fabric into two again. So when you place it on your fabric, you make sure you have some allowance up there. Then you extend your crotch line and you also extend the short length. You extend the lines. Now on the crotch depth, I mark 2.5 inches. On the other side is just 2 inches. Then you connect it. After that, you come to the upper part there. Where you see me placing my tape, go up by 1 inch. Then you now mark your waist measurement. Now the waist measurement, I measured 9 inches, excluding the ½ inch for allowance. I indicate it like that. Then I'm going to connect it that way. From the 1 inch, you connect it to the waistline. So it's giving you a slanty line. Then the next thing is from that 1 inch line, I put 2.5 inches. You can put 3 inches. That is just to have enough allowance for your back butt, for your back. So all the allowance is at the back. After connecting it that way, then you're just going to curve from the crotch depth into the waistline. So just watch what I do. That is how you connect. Now we are done with the back, but I'm not going to cut it because I need to make some calculations to see if I'm correct. Now from your hip, you're going to measure to the other side. Whatever you have there, you times it by 2 because your front part is into 2, your back is into 2. So you do the math, you write it down. Most of you are familiar with this, those who have watched my trouser pattern. Then you do the same thing for the back short. You also, whatever you have there, you calculate, you times it by 2 and you indicate it. Then you now plus both together. When I plus both together, it is giving me 51.9. Yeah, so that 51.9, I'm now going to minus the actual hip measurement of 44 from 8. Now the total of what is giving me is 7.8. Yeah, so it is okay. Anything lesser than 7, you are going to add. Just watch what I'm doing. You just increase that crotch measurement up there, but I'm not going to add it to mine because I have 7.8, so it is okay for me. But if you have anything lesser than 7, then just increase it so you can have enough allowance. Guys, we're done drafting. Now I'm notching all my points because when I'm sewing my trouser or shorts, I like having all my notch line. I like everything be meeting. So we're done drafting the trouser, the short rather, and this is it. Then we're going to drop the back pattern and work on the front. Now these shorts have pockets on both sides. So on the waistline, I went in by 1.5 inches. Then I went down by 7 inches. So I'm going to slant it from the 1.5 to the 7 inches. So after slanting, then before I cut, I'm just going to be cutting off the 1.5 slant we did when we were drafting the front. So you cut it off. Yeah. So before we cut this, I'm going to bring in another fabric. Now this fabric is folded into 4. It's going to be for the pocket facing and the pocket filler. So you fold your fabric. Make sure you have enough for your pockets. So you're going to fold it into 4. Now I now place my front pattern on it, making sure the sides align together. Then the upper part also, I have enough space. So I'm going to be cutting out the shape, the short shape. You cut it that way. Then you also cut the waist shape as well. After doing this, I will remove it. Then I want to have a straight line at this point, so all the 4 pieces have to be equal. So I'm just cutting off the ones that are not equal. Then I went ahead to notch the 4 together on this side. Then I also notched the upper part, so that when I'm sewing my pockets, I know where and where I'm going to place all the curves. Yeah, so I also cut out that part. Now I'm going to remove 2 and keep it aside. Then we'll be working on 2. So this 2 is now for pocket facing. So you take your fabric, your short, and you also place it on it. Then you're going to cut it off. That is, you're cutting all the 4 pieces together. That's the 2 shorts and the 2 pocket facing. Now we have this as our pocket facing, then we have this as our pocket filler. Now you can see when you put your hand inside after sewing, this is how it's going to be. Then the next thing is to cut out our band. Now for the band, I'm going to be cutting enough length. Even though the waist is 36, I cut out 41 inches. I like having extra length, so anyone that is remaining, I'll cut it off. Then for the width, I think I did 5 inches, no, 10 inches. So when I gum it with my paper gum, I will now cut out my band of 2.5 inches. Guys, we're done drafting the shorts, and the next thing is to draft the upper bodice. I also went ahead to fold my fabric into 2. Then I'm marking out the zip allowance of 1 inch. So mates, if you've gotten to this junction and you've not liked this tutorial, kindly give me a like and let's continue. Now after marking the zip allowance, I take another fabric that I folded into 2 and I'm placing it on it. So we are cutting both the front and back together. Now you place it from the zip allowance. So I mark 1 inch also as the starting line. I like having my starting line. Then from there I input the shoulder measurement. Now for the picture on the thumbnail, you see that the shoulder is a little big. So whatever your client's shoulder measurement is, you can add 1 inch or 1.5 inch extra. Then I did 3.5 inches for the neck width. Then for the back neck depth, I did 1 inch. So I'm going to be connecting it. Then for the shoulder slope, I mark 1 inch. So I'm connecting it from the neck width now to the shoulder slope. Then for the front neck depth, I mark 2.5 inches. Then I also connect it to the neck width. Now on the shoulder slope, I went down by 8 inches to get my chest line. So how do you get your chest line? You divide your round bust by 6 plus 1.5 inches. Now from there I mark 19.5 inches for the crop top length. Now you're going to measure your client and ask them where they want their top length to get to. After that, I mark 2 inches for the hemming allowance. Then I cut off the excess. So whatever you have on your shoulder measurements, you repeat it on your chest line. Then you also connect the lines. Then I divide what I have from my shoulder slope to my chest line. I went in by 1/2 inch for the back and I went in by 0.75 for the front. Now on the chest line is where I'll put the round bust measurement. The bust is 41 divided by 2, we have 4.25. I added 1 inch for ease, then 1.5 inches for seam allowance. Then I'm connecting the armhole together. So I'm going to connect the back first, that's the 1/2 inch, into the round bust. Then I went ahead to do that for the front armhole. So we have 2 lines there. When I'm cutting, I'll cut the back then before the front. Now what I have, because it's a boxy crop top, what you have on your round bust measurements, you can just take it straight down, but if you want it to have a little bit of slant, you minus 1 inch from it. So I minus 1 inch from my round bust, then I mark it on the waist line. So this is me cutting the neckline. So you cut the back neckline, that's you cut 1 inch both on the same pattern. Then I added ½ inch to the shoulder measurements for joining. So I went ahead to cut the back, and I also cut the same. Then I'm going to remove the front from the back. Now for our zip, to avoid any bulge or any folding at the back, I just mark 15 inches, and on that 15 inches I minus ½ inch. I'm going to be connecting it to the starting line of the zip, the 1 inch zip allowance, and also connected it to the down part. Then this is me cutting it off. So I'm notching the zip allowance. Guys, we're done with this back. Now you take back your front and you're going to minus that 0.25. Then I also, but before I cut the neck, on that 2.5 I went down by 5 inches. Then on that point I went in by 0.75, and I'm going to connect it to the 5 inches. That is the shape for the front neckline. So we'll be cutting it off. Now you cut out the 2.5 first, then you will now cut off that part. So we have our front neckline. So when you open it, it is giving you something like this. Now guys, we're going to be cutting facing for this. So you take another fabric, fold it into two, and you're going to place the front on it. So we're going to be cutting the front shape. So you also cut out the slanty parts. Then you remove it. So I'm going to be using 2.5 or 3 inches for my facing. Then you come to the shoulder, you mark it, then you mark it all the way down. After that, you are going to cut. So we have the facing for the front. So I'm going to do that for the back as well. You also take your fabric, you fold it into two, you place your back on it. The same thing we did for the front, you repeat it for the back. Then I also mark 2.5 inches, and I'm going to cut. So we have two facing for the back because we are going to be putting zip. So this is how you're going to place it. You place it on each other, right side to right side. You also did that, and you're going to be sewing with ½ inch. Now for the front, you are also going to place the facing on it, right side to right side. You're going to sew just the way you see me touching my hand. You sew like that with ½ inch. Now let's cut the sleeve. So this is also folded into 4 because we are cutting those two sleeves together. I'm going to mark my starting line. After marking the starting line, I'm going to mark the sleeve length. So the sleeve length is 8 inches. I added 2 inches for hemming allowance for turning it at the down part. Then I square it up. Now guys, this tutorial, our next video will be the sewing part. This is for drafting. Now on the starting line, I mark 4 inches. This is how I normally draft my sleeve. Then I get a midline, that's 2 inches. On the 4 inches, you're going to go down by 1 inch. Then from that starting line, you also go down by 4 inches. That will serve as your cap height. Now on that 4 inches is where you put your round sleeve measurements. So I use 8 inches for this person. Now I'm going to connect the 3 points together, just the way you see me connecting like that, to the 1 inch, then to the 2 inches. So it's giving you that shape. What I have there is 9.5 inches, so it is okay for my client armhole. Then I added 1 inch for sewing allowance. So what you have on your round sleeve, you can repeat it for the hem, or you can just minus 1 inch just to have a little bit of, sleeve shape. Now I just repeat the same measurement on the 2 inches hemming allowance, so I don't get short of fabric. If you just slant it and cut like that, your hemming allowance will not be equal. Then I went ahead to cut it, follow the shape and you cut. So our sleeve is ready. Now guys, thank you guys. Our next tutorial will be sewing. Bye.